6:30 p.m. Ms. Reese, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember White. Present. Councilmember Carr. Present. Councilmember McMahon. Here. Councilmember Hills. Here. Councilmember Kusick. Here. Councilmember Smotherson. Here. Mayor Pro.
Here. Thank you very much. During the study session, we asked for a change to the agenda to work on. A motion to be approved. Mr. McMahon, second by Mr. Hales. Any discussion further? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Nay. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. There are no proclamations this evening. You have before you the minutes of the October 8th study session. A motion that the minutes be approved. Mr. Smotherson, second by Ms. Carr. Discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. You have before you the October 22nd regular session minutes. A motion that they be approved. Motion Ms. Carr, second by Mr. Kusick. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. You have before you the October 22nd study session minutes. A motion that they be approved. Mr. Smotherson, a second by Mr. Hales. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. I believe that now Mr. Kusick has an appointment to make.
Yes, sir. I'd like to nominate Carla Teeters-Brown to the Arts and Letters Commission as a film replace Stephanie Schlafer's unexpired term. And I want to thank Stephanie for the work she did do, and would like to welcome Carla, if she's nominated and approved, to serve on our awards commission, because we always need our residents to do this. Thank you.
There's a motion before the body by Mr. Kusick. There's a second by Ms. Carr. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. McMahon.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to nominate Richard Ruger for reappointment to the County Commission.
Motion made by Mr. McMahon, second by Mr. Hales. Any discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
I'd also like to nominate Patricia McQueen for reappointment to Council.
There's a motion before the board. Is there a second? Mr. Kusick, any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. We have no swearing in this evening. We have citizen participation. As many of you know, there are forms to fill out for citizen participation. Each person who signs up to speak on a non-agenda item can speak during this period of time up to a total time allotment of 15 minutes. If you would like to speak during the meeting, we ask that you please fill out that form and know that you have a 5-minute limit. We also ask that you fill out the forms prior to the agenda item coming before the body. Tonight, I think we have 2 requests to speak on non-agenda items. The first request to speak is by Ms. Erin Ginsberg.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, my name is Erin Ginsberg. My address is 430 West Point Court. I'd like to begin by first saying thank you for all your hard work on behalf of our community. Your persistence and due diligence means WashU will finally be asked to pay their fair share. Olive will be redeveloped for the benefit of our 3rd Ward and International Business District. MSD is revising their sanitary storage facility project, and with the help of a federal SAFER grant, our municipal fire and emergency response staffing will be restored. Thank you. Since I last addressed you in October, 35 residents have signed on to be community cat activists. 15 cats have been successfully neutered, vaccinated, and returned to our community, and 8 additional cats are scheduled for trap-neuter vaccination in the coming week. You city residents have been quietly providing food, shelter, and veterinary care for our community cats for many years. Unfortunately, you city's current animal ordinances put these compassionate neighbors at risk for expensive fines, and their neutered and vaccinated kitties future of euthanasia. The cat advocates are respectfully requesting that council revise section 210.40, keeping more than 2 animals per tract of land, section 210.60, impounding of animals at large, and section 210.80, animal abandonment. We also respectfully request that City Council adopt a community cat ordinance. I'll be sharing a copy of the International City and County Management Association's booklet of Managing Community Cats, a guide for municipal leaders, with Ms. Reese later. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you. Our next request to speak is Ms. Donna McGee.
Good evening. My name is Donna McGee. My address is 7584 Melrose, and I'm here again. First of all, I just wanted to acknowledge, I know it's Veterans Day was yesterday, but we observe it today, so I just wanted to thank everybody who served. That's dear to me. My dad was a member of the 182nd Infantry, and he performed 66 jumps, so I'm a daddy's girl, so I have to acknowledge that day and just thank everybody for serving. Also, regarding the tree, it's still a concern of mine. I'm very thankful that the portion of the sidewalk has been addressed so that I can access my driveway. I'm very grateful, honestly. However, the tree is still a hazard. I enjoy raking leaves, believe it or not, I really do. I'm not going to rake anybody's leaves, but it's something I enjoy doing. But the tree is a hazard. It's a nuisance. It's a risk to property, pets, and most of all, human life and well-being. Pruning is temporary. It's mid-November and the tree is not pruned. Pollarding is a way of pruning where it addresses the top portion of the tree. I know the primary and the secondary levels are closer to the ground, but I'm also concerned about the height of the tree. Usually those trees grow about 75 to 90 feet tall, but mine is not mine. The city's tree is very huge, so it's definitely a concern. So I would like for it to be cut down and replaced. The city has a tree bank, and I think that it's not good to be wasteful. If there's a tree bank and there's trees on page 9 of the tree manual, I would love to get with someone so that we can get a tree, hopefully a flowering tree, something dainty. Not necessarily cherry blossom, but something smaller to replace that area. I think that that would be acceptable. Again, I'm still concerned about the roots that are observable at the lip of the driveway, swinging over onto the curb, on the curb rather, versus the driveway. The branches are hanging over the street, like blocking the street's view as you approach the cul-de-sac, as you drive down toward the end of the cul-de-sac. And most importantly, the branches are hanging over my roof. That's been established. They're hanging over my roof, and the heavy drip from the water, precipitation, the leaves in my gutter are a major concern. They're not near my roof, but they're over my roof. It's a city tree. I would not have planted a tree there. It's not a bad tree. Trees are not bad. Trees are good. Take it from a biology major. They're good things. They're living things. They die. They get big, but they're hazards. Okay, tree city, but let's get something out of the tree bank that's workable, not so close and hanging over my roof. Okay, don't want a new roof. The roof was good, passed inspection, and the inspectors are awesome here at UCity. Mr. Jeff, Mr. Tim, Mr. Mark, they're awesome. They address all my questions and pass the inspection, not an issue at all with that. So if the branches break and something hits my roof, that's 18 months of me out of my home. So I look at things from this standpoint. Hazard, financial, if it takes $1,500 to prune a tree or whatever, that's money. So I look at things like that. What is the risk? Am I going to be out of my home for 18 months when there's something that could have been addressed? That's why I look at things. Bottom line, money, expenses, costs, lives, health, rehab. That's my craft. So that's how I look at things. So I don't want to address this being addressed. I don't want to be, I don't want it to be labeled an act of God. I believe that God gives man wisdom to make decisions before things get out of hand. Before lightning strikes and we say, oh, it's an act of God, when there are things that we know or or concerns and should be addressed. So again, I don't want to delay it. I know crowing is temporary, and I will definitely address this with the forester, even though I don't think they gave me their full attention or took me seriously when I presented during the appeal. It's okay to talk science to me, I'm okay, and I don't say that in an arrogant way. I say it with all humility, but if you have a criteria, please address it. I'll be more than happy to give my feedback, and I thank you for this opportunity to present. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Our next request to speak comes from Eleanor Jennings.
We were out of town. I guess we were out of town for about 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks. We were home. We got home 2 weeks ago. When we got home, it became very apparent that the street lights on Forsyth from Big Bend, I would say almost 3/4 of the way down to our Lady Lourdes, were out. It's totally dark. I called City Hall and I told them about it, and the woman said that she would call Ameren. Then, after I did that, I thought, well, there's so many students living on Forsyth. I thought this was going to be something that Washington U didn't want to know about because it is a safety issue. I called Washington U. I talked to Joanna Schooler, who is the neighborhood liaison. She was unaware of it. I told her about it. She was going to call Ameren. And that was 10 days ago. About 4 or 5 days ago, I called up Ameren myself and told them about it. Just coming over here, the lights are still out. And with the time change and with the leaves and everything else coming down, it really is a safety issue. And I just want to let you all be aware of it. And maybe if you all could help, I'd appreciate it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, that concludes our citizen participation portion of the agenda. There is no public hearing tonight. Before you, the council members, you have a consent agenda with 4 items on it. A motion that they be approved. Motion by Ms. Carr, is there a second? Second by Mr. Hales. Discussion. Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Rose.
Honorable Mayor and council members, this first item asks council to consider a zoning map amendment. It's a rezoning of 1167 Grimley Court from general commercial to single-family residential. This is being recommended by both the Planning Commission and the City Manager.
The City Manager has asked for a zoning of 1167 Grimley Court. Is there a motion? Motion by Ms. Carr. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Cusick. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Honorable Mayor and council members, this next item asks for council to consider to formalize the informal task force that has been exploring the feasibility of creating a West Loop Community Improvement District and its structure. Further, that the council committed to an amount not to exceed $35,000 to cover expenses associated with this project should the council accept the feasibility of creating the CID. I'm recommending this item.
And before your recommendation by the City Manager, is there a motion? Motion by Ms. Carr. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Clay. Mr. Smotherson.
Mayor Crowe and the City Manager Rose, I just wanted to ask real quick, just to identify the West Loop, is that our Delmar? Yes. That's you said? Yes. Okay, so I didn't know when we started designating that as West.
When that conversation came forward between the business owners, both of those that are on the city side and the U City side, they had called it amongst themselves
specifically, this is, if you could explain that, and just go into a little detail about what this SID is for, why, what they're asking, what the intention is, you know, if you could add.
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Stevenson, there are two issues associated with this item. One is making sure that the business owners that would be assessed a higher rate are, I'm saying this as property owners within the loop that would be assessed a higher rate is supported by the creation of a community improvement district. So that's one. And then the second issue is if that hurdle is passed, is then what is a reasonable structure for the West Loop CID, which simply means the membership, similar to what we just reviewed with the Loop Special Business District, who would actually be on that board, what would be the officers, and so forth. The intention of the new CID, proposed CID, is so that they can further improvements within the Loop Special Business District. And as a part of that, they would be asking the city to contribute funding, which they would then match. So they're hopeful that they will be able to increase the amount of revenues that will be used to cover, for example, infrastructure, policing, cleaning, so those types of expenditures within that special business district.
I'm going to allow some others to ask questions because I'm trying to absorb what you just said and just try to understand why what you gave requires an additional amount of money. But go ahead.
Well, you're talking about I'm not sure what you're referencing, but the business owners are, the property owners are wanting to assess themselves additional taxes so that they were paid to a district that they would then be able to use additional monies for improvements. The funds that you're talking about here were actually, I think I would say, the previous administration did not necessarily structure it the way it needed to be structured. We've actually asked that structure be put in place. So, I would think that's the best way to do this, to document this going forward. I'm not sure who was first, but I'll get Mr. Kusick over here, then we'll stay that way.
You can skip me, Mayor, thank you. I think you answered my question.
Okay. Ms. Carr.
So I'd like to give you a little history. In 2013, EDRST funds were set aside $40,000 for hiring legal counsel to advise the new city side of the loop on establishing a community improvement district. And that community improvement district could have included a lot of things, additional sales taxes or whatever, but the people who were involved felt that it should be limited only to taxing themselves, the property owners, only to taxing themselves because they felt that the sales taxes were already quite high. And but they rejected, and council rejected at the time, going with the law firm. The initial idea was to establish a CID, or Community Improvement District, very much like the one at the city. Everything would be done at the same time. And at some point, a 353 corporation, overlay corporation, that would have given more kind of an interjurisdictional right to do some things. And it was turned down. But the $40,000 was still set aside for this group to consider establishing a community improvement district. Unfortunately, as we've seen before, the money was not encumbered properly. And so by the time they got around to working through this and developing a structure that they wanted to, we noticed that that the group of people working on it weren't empowered to work on it, hadn't been established to work on it, and that we hadn't encumbered the funds. So this is really a promise that was made quite a while ago, and they've been operating believing that they, had been funded by economic development retail sales tax funds from 2013, well, from 2014, and so this is kind of a
thus far? What is this? Is this money that's already been allocated and not properly encumbered? Is this new? Are these new dollars coming in?
Mayor, Councilmember Clay, the funding was allocated. It was not carried forward as a part of the budget process. And so the funds simply went back to the EDRST reserves. So that's why it needs another council action in order to reallocate those funds.
This one's coming out of the EDRST, though, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and so what is the activity been on this project since its inception?
Well, over here, Councilmember Clay, there have been some legal fees that have been encumbered. I believe that the informal task force has been working very hard in trying to identify what type of structure would be reasonable for the West Loop CID. So those sorts of activities is what's been occurring. And they needed legal guidance as they went about trying to establish what their reasonable structure.
Okay, so this covers just the legal work, and that's the extent of it.
That's correct.
Ms. Carr.
So I want to ask for clarification. Are we establishing this task force first to take a look at the feasibility, and if then the council decides that it's feasible or we adopt their report, then that money will become available?
We approached him. That is correct. That's the intention.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. We now move to the unfinished business portion of our agenda. You have before you bill number 9368. And we are up now for the second reading. Please make the second reading.
An ordinance authorizing the execution of a contract with St. Louis County, Missouri for Next Generation 911 service.
We have the third reading.
An ordinance authorizing the execution of a contract with St. Louis County, Missouri for Next Generation 911 service.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Smugs, is there a second? Ms. Carr. Any discussion? Hearing none, would you please, I apologize, Clay.
I'm sorry. I just had a question. I noticed in the review it says enable text and video and not. I was just curious about that.
Councilmember Clay, I'd like to bring up the police chief to comment on the capabilities. Chief Hampton.
Good evening. I didn't hear the question, Council.
I just on in the background review you mentioned the text capability associated with 911. I didn't see any further explanation of that. That was just interesting to me.
Right. One, with this capability of this update of the equipment provided by St. Louis County and the ECC, you will be able to text your emergency to the police departments that have this new equipment in new agreement with St. Louis County. And this is only provided for those communities that provide dispatching for police, EMS, and fire, as well as just police dispatching as well.
Thank you, Chief. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Reese, would you please call roll?
Councilmember Carter.
Aye.
Councilmember Remain.
Aye.
Councilmember Hales.
Aye.
Councilmember Kusick.
Aye.
Councilmember Smotherson.
Aye.
Councilmember Clay. Mayor Pro.
Aye. Thank you very much. As we move to the resolution, there are no resolutions tonight. We would like to introduce bill number 9369. Mr. Hales, will you get that be first reading?
An ordinance amending Schedule 3 of the Traffic Code to revise traffic regulations providing herein.
Thank you very much. Would someone please introduce bill number 9370? Ms. Carver, please have the first reading.
An ordinance designating a portion of the city of University City, Missouri as a redevelopment area, approving the Olive Boulevard Commercial Corridor and Residential Conservation Redevelopment Plan, and making findings related thereto.
Thank you very much. We have a number of requests to speak on this bill and on subsequent bills. For everyone in the audience, just so you know, the bills are being introduced tonight. There is no vote being taken tonight. This is an introduction. There will be the first reading tonight, and then at a later date there will be the second and the third reading. The first request to speak on Bill 9370 is Ms. Sylvia Boyer.
Sonia Pointer, 8039 Canton Avenue. So this is for Bill 9370 and each of the subsequent bills regarding the TIF development or redevelopment of Olive 170. As I stated before, I am against this project mainly because of how it's been handled and also because I believe that it will lead to gentrification of the third ward, displacement of people of color and lower income to moderate income people. I also think that the city has not handled this project correctly and has not properly allowed all of the residents to truly vet the plan. And I know that this is just an introduction, but again, this is what a lot of people have been complaining about for several months now. So, but I know you all will vote however you want to vote, but I do want to say this. Anyone who, within at least the last 3 years, who has purchased a home over in the third ward, you should recuse, that is not your primary home, you should recuse yourself from voting on this project. I want to talk about the third ward meeting that we had where people voiced similar concerns that they voiced at the TIF Commission meeting. People stated, myself included, that we want an equity board that is independent of the city council and city manager and staff and is appointed by residents. And we want this equity board to have the power to distribute the $10 million or $15 million that you all say is supposed to benefit the third ward as a result of this project. We also want taxes to be frozen, especially for the most vulnerable of our population group in the city, and for other residents as well. We also want affordable housing for home buyers and renters alike. And then a lot of people talk about Plan B. What happens if this development doesn't go through? Why don't we have this information? People want to know, what's the Plan B? What happens next? People talk about hiring lower income residents and paying living wages as part of this project. Hiring construction workers that actually reflect the demographics of the city. I believe it's 35 to 40% Black. Job training, banning the box, allowing felons the opportunity to work and provide for their families and themselves. Also, a proof of funding from Novus, stating that they absolutely can get this project done so that we're not left with the bill. Also, at the third ward meeting, people talked about if there's additional revenue that it goes back to the third ward, to take eminent domain off the table for property owners. And I know you all said that you won't do it for homeowners, but also for small businesses. And then people talked about wanting, the residents talked about wanting a plan for Olive Boulevard that meets the needs of all the residents. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Our next request to speak is Ms. Jan Adams.
Jan Adams, 7150 Cambridge Avenue. First, at the last council meeting, a citizen suggested that you all consider a list of 13 suggestions for spending the anticipated $10 million allocation from the TIF funds. This is based on a post in the social media platform entitled UCity on Record. To clarify for the official city records, UCOTR is a Facebook group administered by the wife of council member Steve McMahon. The administrators of this group have subjectively banned membership by citizens who have submitted posts they don't like and give no explanation for doing so. Further, the administrators then allow their current members to falsely impugn those former members by name when they know that those former members cannot respond. For instance, Jeff Hales attended a court hearing on my equity claim to prevent taxpayer funds being used to defend and settle certain personal lawsuits against individual council members. He then misrepresented on UCOTR what took place during the hearing by stating that I did not know the applicable court rule, when in fact it was Judge Judy Draper who did not know what rule applied to my motion. She handed me her rule book and asked me to find the applicable rule for her. Judge Draper's lack of knowledge of court rules was the basis for her recent failure to obtain her judgeship, as documented in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. However, I was prevented by the spouse of a council member from correcting the false record that Mr. Hales posted. Consequently, the UCOTR is simply a forum for political propaganda and should always be ignored when conducting official city business. The consultant this council hired, using taxpayer funds, presented this council with the current best practices for good governance, and he expressly stated that you should not participate in this type of social media campaign for your personal political gain. Regarding the ordinances being introduced tonight relating to the Outlaw development, they are both very poorly crafted and egregiously incomplete. First, the drafting problems. On page 1, the last 3 paragraphs read, whereas the development plan envisions, that's a quote, what the development will be. This is an ordinance. How do you legislate and enforce your 7 visions? And what happens when new council members with different visions are in office? This is why we citizens need a community benefits agreement. On page 2, under findings, paragraph D reads, the city has developed this is a quote, the city has developed a plan for relocation assistance. I have never seen such a plan, and it is not included in the exhibits to the ordinance. Why are you withholding the plan? The exhibits have not been published. Instead, you simply, quote, offer access to the public if one travels to the clerk's office. But that notice is published at 4:38 p.m. on Friday afternoon, so it's not likely that a citizen can read those exhibits that require 48 hours before this meeting. And these exhibits are critical information. I have spent 6 hours today attempting to obtain copies of the exhibits set out in the ordinances. At 3 o'clock today, I received some documents via email and then went to the clerk's office to look at the documents as presented. There are a number of documents in a 3-ring notebook that are not identified as the exhibits to the ordinances. The various pages can be replaced by anyone at any time to obfuscate just what this council is purporting to do. I know that Mr. McMahon knows, and presumably Mr. Crow knows, the proper way to incorporate exhibits into ordinances. Therefore, I conclude that this is an intentional anomaly so as to avoid accountability. Finally, I confirm with Mr. Rose today that there is no, quote, plan for relocation assistance that is referenced in the ordinances. How does a citizen comment on a document you fail to provide? Once again, I question whether you are receiving competent legal advice for this process. and ask that my written comments be attached to the minutes.
Next request to speak is Mr. Don Fitz.
My name's Don Fitz. I live at 720 Harvard, University City. I work to elect those on the council who oppose the political machine of Mayor Shelley Welsh, which is almost everybody here. I especially supported those who were victimized by Shelley Welsh, Paulette Carr and Terry Crow. I found it very disturbing a few years ago to come to council meetings and watch the Welsh group ignore concerns with privatizing the ambulance service and move ahead without a vote of the citizens. And it was appalling to me to watch Shelley Welsh vilify Terry Crow. I supported the opposition of virtually everybody running that I knew, because I assumed that when the opposition became a majority, that it would fundamentally change not only the policies in University City, but the willingness to listen to those who have concerns without denigrating them. I was disturbed when the plan for Olive the 170 development was presented after the election, and there was no prior hint of several things. First of all, that it would undermine minority businesses in Ward 3. Second, that it would change the nature of University City by focusing on giveaways to big business rather than family-owned businesses. And third, that it would give away tens of millions of dollars to super rich corporations who already have more money than they know what to do with. Once again, it was appalling to hear it presented as a final deal with no compromise, and reminded me repeatedly of the deal for the ambulance, which most of the people in this room witnessed. And instead of examining requests that are very reasonable, and as reasonable as those regarding the previous administration's privatization of ambulance services, we again see the victimization of those questioning decisions. Basically, what has happened in University City is that the new political machine has become the same as the old political machine that it replaced. The faces have changed, but the policies and practices are identical, especially the practices of privatization overreaching citizens. I would like to ask that before a vote taken on this, and actually this is the single most important thing that I'm saying that I hope appears in the minutes, I would like a request that the City Council allow the citizens to vote on these proposals before going forward with them. While I know it may seem ridiculous to everybody here who agrees with me and disagrees with me, because to ask for a vote, because they know that the council will not allow a vote, just like the previous administration did not want to approve Proposition H to preserve historic buildings, but they couldn't block it. I want to request that my asking for a vote appear in the minutes of this council meeting, so in the future, citizens of University City can see that there was a request for a democratic vote on the most divisive issue which has come before this council, and that the current administration is refusing the citizens of University City the right to decide on this issue.
Our next request to speak, I believe, I don't know, Ms. Hardy, would you like to speak on all of them at once? Is that okay? Is that fine? Yes.
I'm here tonight.
Could we please have your name and address, please?
Phyllis Hardy, Sunset Hills. I'm here tonight because I'm concerned for the residents and the business owners in the development area, and notices spread in eminent domain, as well as his ability to complete the project. I have requested a copy of the full set of projections and have not been provided these documents. As I said in the previous meeting, even without the complete financials, I can see that the projections that you're relying on are overstated, and if more accurate assumptions were used, the project would show that the TIF could not be paid off in the 23-year time frame required by law. About 13 years ago, Novus Development tried to take my property in Sunset Hills. The Sunset Hills Council made the same mistake you're about to make. They listened to the developer instead of their citizens. We fought and eventually won with the help of our attorneys and the Institute of Justice. At prior meetings, I have request for the complete set of financials which was rejected. However, some simple algebra shows that the assumptions used in the projections are not valid. So if I can see this, it's obvious that the bank that or private equity source providing financing can also see it. So before you vote on this, I would recommend that you insist to have complete proof of financing for this project, not a letter of interest, before you vote yes. I will never forget the destruction Novus caused in my neighborhood. We have recovered, but it took several years, and the city had to find help. And the city had to help fund some of the costs of the neighborhood's recovery. After the city lost their court battle, the mayor admitted that he regretted not listening to his citizens. I quote from the February 15, 2006 Post-Dispatch article. At the meeting, Sunset Hills Mayor, Mayor Hobbs said Novus had misled the city. The accuracy of their proposal did not meet the standards needed. Hobbs told the back room. In fact, after the city was defeated in court, most of the aldermen agreed that they wished they had never tried to force Novus development on the residents and businesses. In fact, at the next principal election in Sunset Hills, the mayor and half the aldermen were voted out of office, and the other half of the aldermen later did not run for re-election, or they were voted out of office also. When Sunset Hills made the mistake of relying on overstated projections, a residential neighborhood and surrounding small businesses were left in a bind. Novus had told the city that he had financing for the project, but he only had a letter of interest from a bank, not a firm commitment. When it came time to buy out the properties, there was no bank financing, and homeowners and small businesses were left with 2 mortgages to pay. Many of the residents had purchased a new home, assuming that their old home would be purchased by Novus, not realizing that he didn't have a firm commitment for financing for the project. Do the right thing and don't cause this havoc in University City. Do not vote yes until you see the full proof of financing for this project. Thank you.
Next request to speak on Bill 9370 is Tom Sullivan.
Tom Sullivan, 751 Syracuse Avenue. I oppose Bill 9370 because I oppose the Allo 170 development. It's a terrible proposal and certainly a bad deal for you city taxpayers. They would pay $70.5 million for the development, $10 million within the developer. The development this big should have been put to voters. No doubt the fear was that it would be badly defeated. To tell all the residents of the affected area they are expendable and will be kicked out of their homes, and to tell the business owners they will be kicked out of their buildings is the worst thing University City has ever attempted. Most incredible of all has been the deception and outright lying about the project. When the proposal was first announced, it was said eminent domain would only be used for public storage. That was only the first lie about eminent domain. Several others have followed. Never has there been a more dishonest mayor and city council than what we have today. The project would destroy an area with thriving businesses while at the same time the loop has many vacant storefronts. Just the old Cicero space and the old bread company space have been vacant for over a year. The same city government that does nothing while the loop declines now wants to bulldoze 50 acres with many successful businesses. It seems the motto of city government is, we won't stop till we screw up the whole city. The Allo 170 development has been promoted as virtually the savior for University City. It would not be. University City has been a city in decline for years because it has 3 big problems. The project won't help with any of them. Big problem number 1 is crime. Hardly a week goes by that there isn't a terrible crime being committed in University City and dozens of smaller ones. Big problem number 2 is the University City School District. The schools are some of the worst in the area. 50 school districts in the St. Louis area, new city schools, ranked number 47 in state test scores. People don't want to live in a city where so many students get a poor education. Big problem number 3 is this has been a badly managed city. There has been one costly screw-up after another. The biggest is right next door, the Trailer Park Police Station that will cost many millions of dollars. It was completely avoidable. And of course, there is a Loop Trolley project. It was going to do great things for the Loop, but it has been a disaster. The proposed development is a bad deal for the people whose homes would be torn down. It's a bad deal for the business owners who would be kicked out of their buildings, and it's a bad deal for University City. You don't build up a city by tearing it down. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
those requests to speak for Bill 9370. May I have the introduction, please, of Bill number 9370. What would like to introduce Mr. Smotherson? May we have the first reading, Ms. Reese?
An ordinance approving a redevelopment project for redevelopment project area 1 of the Olive Boulevard Commercial Quarter and Residential Conservation Redevelopment Area, adopting tax increment financing with respect thereto and authorizing certain actions by city officials.
Thank you very much. We have one request to speak on this, Ms. Jane Adams.
Jan Evans, 7150 Cambridge Avenue. I reiterate my comments on the earlier bill, and I just ran out of time, but want to conclude by saying this council's failure to even introduce these ordinances in accordance with both the Missouri Sunshine Laws and your own rules and procedures does not instill confidence in your ability to direct this major redevelopment project. I urge you to slow down and proceed with caution. You are destroying homes. You are destroying neighborhoods. You are destroying businesses without allowing due process. That's all my comment on this. Thank you.
I would like to introduce Bill number 9372. Ms. Carr, may we have the first reading?
An ordinance approving a redevelopment project for redevelopment project area 2 of the Olive Boulevard Commercial Quarter and Residential Conservation Redevelopment Area, adopting tax increment financing with respect thereto and authorizing certain actions by city officials.
Thank you very much. Ms. Adams, you signed up for this one as well. Would you like to speak on Bill 9372?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'd like to introduce Bill number 9373. Ms. Carr, may we have the first reading?
An ordinance approving a redevelopment project for redevelopment project area 3 of the Olive Boulevard Commercial Quarter and Residential Conservation Redevelopment Area, adopting tax increment financing with respect thereto and authorizing certain actions by city officials.
Thank you very much. That concludes the introduction of new bills. We will now move into council reports. And does any member of council have any reports they would like to make under this section of the agenda? Ms. Carr.
Thank you, Mayor. So many of you received our holiday issue of Roars, and I'd like to applaud actually Councilmember Smotherson for his Councilmember Corner. But I'd like you actually to open to the center bowl, and you will see a survey by the Stormwater Task Force. And the Stormwater Task Force was established to develop an inventory for the stormwater problems that we have here in University City. We lost 2 people in 2008 due to a flood. We have constant flooding. So this task force is doing some pretty important work, and right now they need your help. If you experience any kind of flooding, whether it's on your property, on your sidewalk, in your basement, we would ask that you fill out this form, or you can do it online. And the task force will be collecting the data and putting it together to present to council an interim report fairly soon. So again, I'd ask anyone who has stormwater problems of any sort to please fill out this survey. We need your help.
Mr. Smotherson.
Thank you, sir. Just a reminder to let everybody know that Arts and Letters Commission is doing their reception. They're holding their reception for the Returning Artist Series featuring Jeffrey Anderson, class of 75. And that's Wednesday, 7 p.m. at the high school. Thank you.
Mr. Kusick.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to point everyone's direction as Councilmember Carter to the Roars, because earlier this evening we had a presentation by the library board concerning the future of our public library, and the library is seeking public input on aspects of the library. And we look at the section in the Roars that the library board will be holding 2 more community meetings, focus group meetings. If you would look at those times and dates in there, they would like to know, get input from residents in University City about the future of the library, and it would be great if you could participate in any of these and give your feedback to the library. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other issues during this section of the agenda? Hearing none, we will now move. There are no more citizen comments to be made at this time, no sign-in sheets. We will now move to council comments. To my colleagues. Mr. Clay.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Crowe. One of the great benefits of municipal representative government is that often the things that happen to those you represent happen to you because the area you're representing is so small. That may not be the case in congressional or state districts due to the size. And so I want to revisit something that my colleagues, Councilman Smokerson and Councilman Cusick, brought up in the past. And that is, what is the city's role, if it has a role, in fact, in monitoring the activities of our utilities as they are doing necessary work. On Midland Drive, which is my street, Missouri American Water is currently in the process of replacing a main. And in that process, they did reach out to citizens, individual residents, and asked if they would like the pipes that lead from the house to the main, that in many cases are lead, given the age of the city and properties, can be replaced. I and other residents, neighbors on my street, took them up on that offer, and myself and at least one other resident have found that in that process, the replacement work for steps, for grass, for other affected areas, shall we say, has been less than adequate. In my particular case, I have some brick stairs that have sunken in completely. And so I will certainly follow up with the city manager, but I know this is something that at least 2 council members have brought up in the past, the idea of the city somehow working with these utilities to make sure that when they repair and replace, those repairs and replacements are at least as good as what was there before. So I will continue anecdotally to keep the council apprised of this, because I know it can, my situation is not unique. It is reflective of what other citizens have gone through in the third ward throughout University City. But given this platform, I feel it's important to lift that up in a very brief way, keep folks apprised. So thank you.
Ms. Jennings, earlier you made a comment about your street lights out. We've had street lights out along Delmar between north and south on the south side of Delmar now for several months. The city manager and staff have been working with Ameren around the clock, day in and day out, trying to get those lights repaired. Apparently, Ameren doesn't know where the lines are. They had to go to St. Louis County to get permits to run new lines. Is that correct, Mr. Rose?
That's correct.
And so we do know about the lights that are on Forsyth, and we were working with Ameren as much as we can to get all of these lights repaired. I did suggest to Mr. Rose that maybe we don't pay our electric bill, but he didn't think that was a good idea. This was found on the front of my door. Many of you I know have this because I've driven around the neighborhoods. This is the little bag that we're annually put on our door by the Boy Scouts of America, asking for food donations, and they're going to be picking these up this Saturday. So please help out, because this food goes to help the hungry in St. Louis. It's a very good, worthwhile endeavor. And I'm sure you've got cans of food in your kitchen cabinets that you're not using that you could donate. Also, I'd like to remind everyone that the weather outside was pretty nasty, and it's time to start salting our sidewalks. And for our four-legged friends that walk up and down the sidewalks, there is such a thing as pet unfriendly salt. So when you're buying your salt or items to salt your sidewalk, read the front of it to make sure it's pet friendly, because regular salt does harm their feet. And finally, I'd like to say that I recently completed the University City Police Citizens Academy, and Chief Hampton is in the back of the room. And I would just like to commend the police department and his staff for a wonderful program. I think that they do this twice a year. So if any other resident is interested in doing this, that they will be hosting one in the spring. Is that correct, Chief?
That's correct.
Yes, there will be one in the spring. I think it's a very good program. One of the things that really impressed upon me was when our officers, our men and women in uniform, are responding to calls, whether it's a domestic disturbance or they're pulling over a vehicle, how much they don't have the control of the situation, and the psychological training they have to go through so that they do have the control of the situation, because they never know what they're walking into. So that really hit home to me on their training around that and their professionalism. So again, I want to thank the police department for that and for keeping us safe. Thank you.
Ms. Carr.
Thank you. So, good news. Skiff is coming to U City. Nina Gachi, the owner of Skiff International, is in the process of expanding her business on the Hill to University City's International District at $8,100 Olive. In the interest of full disclosure, Nina is my sister-in-law, and we have been discussing her move to U City's International District, the one that everybody thinks is under siege, but is in fact not, since early this summer during the redevelopment discussions and the TIF hearings, which, by the way, lasted 90 days, not 4 hours, as the ambulance salesperson did. Many of you, especially the women, will know Skiff because we wear Skiff, and it's instantly recognizable. For those who do not, you can probably find it on Facebook. Skiff's first big break was in 1999, when Nina designed over 90 sweaters for the popular science fiction film The Matrix. But those who know Skiff know that there's much more to Nina's company than its Matrix claims to fame. No two garments are exactly alike. Each unique piece is handmade by a team of artists and friends who all share the commitment to quality, American-made, and environmental responsibility. At our Hill location, you'll find a St. Louis fashion incubator for emerging designers. Gosh, we want an incubator. And her fans, we love to hang out with her and each other at her store on the Hill, adore the clothes, and are proud to wear St. Louis designed and made. Nina is excited to expand to University City and only considered the idea of bringing her business to the International District, where she can add her Italian heritage to our Asian, African, and Caribbean businesses. Depending upon inspection, she could open as early as December. This is really a big deal in terms of adding something special and unique to Olive and University City. We are not tearing University City down. This is the beginning of what I expect to happen on Olive. To many of us, her new store will be a destination, and I'd like to welcome Skiff to University City.
Mr. Hales.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to, provide my perspective on this development. I see a lot of new faces here tonight. And as someone who has been here now for a little over 6 months, I remember vividly when we had what I think were truly controversial issues, whether it be outsourcing, the bond issues. And I know many of you remember those times as well, because these council chambers were packed with people. I understand and I appreciate and respect all the people who do not agree with, do not support this redevelopment. I can't say we're on the same page, but I do want to say that I have not seen, and I don't think anyone in this room has seen, the level of concern. Certainly there hasn't been a level of outrage that we saw just a few years ago in these same chambers when there was literally standing room only. As it relates to this development, in 6 months, I have actually received more emails in the last 3 weeks about feral cats and asking us not to euthanize them than I have received in 6 months emails from people in opposition to this development. Further, over the course of 6 months, particularly from the first ward, and I think this is, Steve and I have talked about this, I think we can say quite clearly we've received far more emails, and we've shown tremendous support from our constituents on this redevelopment. Finally, it's always interesting to get an honorable mention about something I said at some point in history. It's for, I think it's interesting political theater, but I believe the comment that was referenced, and Ms. Adams, I welcome you to speak with me after the meeting, was from March 2nd, 2017. If that's a comment, it is on Facebook, and in looking at it, it was quite factual. So I am not beyond telling anybody I made a mistake or I was wrong. But please reach out to me if you think I misrepresented anything you or anyone has said on record. So thank you very much.
Prior to adjournment, I'd like to make just a few comments. I hope that this body will always be willing to listen to those people that we may even not be on the same page, and that no person ever feels that their ideas or opinions or their person is denigrated in any way. I hope that every person who has spoken tonight, as of all of the previous hearings on the development, I think that everyone has been listened to. I think the one thing that we may just need to have this conversation. We just may not agree with you. We just may not. And when a person gets up and speaks and says, we demand this and we demand this, but it's usually one person saying the same thing over and over again, just using the pronoun we, doesn't mean that there's a huge group out there. It doesn't. And I do think the comparison between the outsourcing of EMS and this development is about as far off as it can be. Literally, this development has had one hearing after the other with 400, 600 people all having the opportunity to speak on multiple occasions versus the outsourcing that occurred on a moment's notice with these chambers completely packed with virtually every single person in opposition. So I do think when we're going to make a comparison, we ought to make an appropriate comparison. But again, we may just disagree, and that is okay. That's what these chambers are about. And as a matter of fact, that's why an awful lot of people are celebrating Veterans Day, because we have a number of folks, both my grandparents, my father, my cousins, who served in World War I, World War II, every war since. And they did it so we all had a right to speak, and we also treat each other with respect. So I welcome a motion for adjournment for this evening. Motion by Mr. Clegg, second by Mr. Hales. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye. We are adjourned.